Hello and welcome. I'm Peace Mitchell and I'm co-founder of Osmompreneur and the Women's Business School, and I'm also very proud to be the Australian Ambassador for Women in Tech. Today I'm meeting with 4 incredible Australian women in tech, and we're going to be talking about 2021, the year of female domination. So I'd love to begin by introducing each of our panelists. We'll start with you, Emma. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. I'm a tech entrepreneur and also data solutions architect at The Trade Desk. I've been in the tech industry for over 15 years in various roles, from software engineer, lead architect, etc. And also I founded my own startup in 2019. That's my journey in the tech industry.
Beautiful. Thanks, Emma. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Tyron, I'd love to hear from you now. Could you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Of course. My name is Cheryl Williams. I'm the founder and CEO of The Right Fit, which is a two-sided marketplace for creative talent. It's my second business. My first is a modeling agency, which is nearly 15 years old. The Right Fit is just over 5 years old now. We're venture capital backed by Airtree Venture Capital, and we have offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Singapore, and the US.
Beautiful. It's wonderful to have you here, Tyron.
Thanks.
I'd now love to introduce you to Suzette. Hello, Suzette. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me here. I'm Suzette Bailey. I'm the CEO of Simple Marketing AI, and like Taryn, I also run a second business which had its 21st birthday last September, which is an IT consulting business working to the Australian federal government. But my main business is simplemarketing.ai, which is an AI platform that generates your marketing content for you in under a minute using keywords and no templates. So that's the startup. We're only just launched this early this year, and we're growing that as we speak.
Fantastic. It's wonderful to have you here, Suzette. I'd now love to introduce you to Belinda. Hello, Belinda. How are you?
Can you hear me now? Yeah, awesome. I'm awesome. Thank you so much for having me on this. I'm super excited. I think it's like our first thing that we're doing together, Peace, so super awesome. So I'm the founder and partner of Anamus, which is a digital agency for tech startups and medium-sized startups. I also sit on the board of BizPay, which is a fintech company, which we're actually about to go public in November, which is super exciting. So BizPay is a fintech company which allows you to pay in full with any business service across any service company like accountants, lawyers, recruitment agencies, and so forth. I also am involved in a company called Anywhere Auctions, and essentially Anywhere Auctions is an application where you can bid anywhere, any time across the world on a property, and that's a private sale or an auction. And we're about to launch in USA, which is super exciting, and we're doing cool things there. And we're about to launch another product which is called Ployed, and Ployed is actually the only flat fee model service in recruitment. So instead of paying those high fees or breaking the bank, you can essentially recruit and scale your talent with paying a one fee.
Fantastic. It's wonderful to have you here, Belinda.
Thank you.
Well, I'd love to get started with this conversation, and I'd love to start by hearing about how you found yourself in your career going into the tech space and what that journey has been like for you. So, Emma, I'd love to start with you. Could you share a bit of your journey of how you have found yourself in a career in tech?
My story back a long time ago when I was quite young, and my dad bought a PC for my brother that was studying computer. And then how I started learning about computer, it was around 1999, something like that. And I started learning programming at that time as well, along my brother. And that was the time that I decided, actually, when I go to university, I study IT as well. And that's how I moved to tech industry, basically.
So how old were you when you first started programming and coding?
14, 15 years old. Yeah. Then, I continue with that because I was really excited about problem solving, etc. So I love it. I was doing it a lot, and it kept moving me toward that space. Yeah.
And were you learning it at school, or was it just, were you self-taught?
No, because my older brother was learning, so I just started learning from him a bit. At that time was Quick Basic and DOS, so it was very old days of programming. So yeah, I was doing that. Then Windows come along and everything, etc. So keep continuing on that. Then when I studied at university, during my internship, I went to a big company at that time, along with my other 20 classmates as an interns. And at the end, because I was the first one that finished the project, I got hired by the company between.
We just lost you for a minute there. Yeah, you were saying that you were hired by the company?
Yes, and that's how I started my career.
Beautiful. Thank you. So Tyron, I'd love to go to you now and hear about your journey of getting into this tech space.
Yes. Unlike Emma, I didn't have an older brother or anyone around me to show me the ropes to get started. But I dipped my toe into technology, building an end-to-end onboarding, calendar management, and payroll integration software with my first business, Link Models. Maybe 11 years ago now. And I thought I did all the right things. I went out and I got 3 competitive quotes and, found an agency to build it with. And I didn't know anything about building an MVP and I ended up building a bigger than Ben-Hur product that cost, 5 times more than it was supposed to cost. But I fell in love with solving business problems using technology. And it was like a very expensive uni degree in learning how to build a product, how to find the right tech team. And I just really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed learning and challenging myself and being out of my depth. So it's while our industry, in talent and creative talent was really being disrupted. And I could see that there was an opportunity to build a 2-sided marketplace that could streamline some of the inefficiencies and inequalities in our space. So I decided to start a tech company and went out to market and hired a great team and bought all of our services in-house as opposed to outsourcing to agencies, which I'd learned the hard way the first time. And we raised venture capital, probably 6 months after launching. So it was a bit of a whirlwind ride that I couldn't have predicted starting out, and obviously a non-technical founder. So have learnt a huge amount along the way.
Sounds like it's been an incredible journey, Tyron.
It's been very, very fun. Challenging, but fun.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Suzette, I'd love to hear from you. How did you get into this space?
Well, I got a little bit differently to most people. And in fact, I didn't quite realise, how early my tech background or interest came until Emma was actually talking, and realised that as a child, I used to also play around with creating code and that sort of thing, and was self-taught and played around with it. But realistically, my actual journey really started when I was working for the Australian Quarantine Service for the government as I had my original degrees in genetics and biochemistry. And so I was working as a quarantine officer, and my boss at the time said, there's this thing called the internet. Him being a vet, had no idea about tech. You're good with computers and IT. You go on to so anything that had anything to do with IT in our area, I was the one who was nominated. And I sort of realized very early on that although I loved my original degree and I love genetics, I'm not great in labs. So me and Gilson Pipettes did not get along. So for me to go further in my science degree, I had to go and get a PhD or something like that, which was just not going to work. So what it gave me as an opportunity, this going on these, doing all of this sort of stuff when I was working for Quarantine. And then I realized that, moving into IT, a lot of what you do and your experience and your knowledge is more important than a piece of paper in that particular industry. So I made the switch across. And that's about a year or two later, I then actually founded Sensory 7, which is my first original company. And that was in the area of IT consulting. So I became a specialist and grew to be pretty much the person around information management, records management, and document management intersection for the Australian federal government. Found that I really, after a while, when you've done the same thing for the same department several times after a few years at each time, it gets a little boring. So that's part of the time. And I also found I wanted a passion to work with entrepreneurs and business owners. So I tried to take what I did then and move it into the actual small business and entrepreneur market, and bombed spectacularly. Could not write, could not do content marketing, which is hilarious now, considering I'm now running a business to do that. But it's actually the genesis of my business. It's because when I saw AI technology, which I had always had an interest in, especially with the natural language processing engines, I saw a real need to be able to couple the ability to generate content using AI with this fundamental issue that a lot of small business owners have of being able to create content. So essentially I created an entire platform because I hated it so much myself. And so that's sort of where we get to now.
Amazing. I love the way that you've solved a problem that you were facing, and now you're helping everyone else with that. Yeah, incredible. Thank you. Belinda, I'd love to hear about your journey. How did it all begin for you?
Well, I feel as though I'm like the least technical person here when it comes to tech. I'm definitely not a coder or anything like that. That's totally not the background I came from. I actually grew up in sales and marketing. So a lot of my experience came from sales and marketing, media. And I guess when I started the recruitment agency, that's when I found all the flaws, and I felt that it was super traditional. It was too service-based. It was super high in activity. And I felt as though there could have been a better solution to it. Hence why I started, reaching out to engineers, and I started to get introduced to CTOs and mentors. And then I ended up on boards of tech companies, even though I'm not a tech, I guess, I would say I'm tech fanatic in tech startups, but I wouldn't say I'm from a technical background. But I love tech companies. I love everything tech. As Taryn was saying, it's literally solving a problem, at a larger scale. So I guess for me, that was super exciting. But yeah, I came from sales and marketing, went into recruitment, found the problem, landed into tech. And then I went into fintech from there, and then prop tech. So I guess I've kind of played in all spaces now. But essentially my roles within these companies were influencing the masses to jump on board to scale up that company, and increasing, I guess, funding. So attracting, high net worth individuals to scale the company at a funding scale. So not necessarily VCs, but more high net worth individuals, family offices, that type of thing. And then connecting the dots with strategic partnerships to be able to scale out those businesses as well, because that's super important. And getting people, corporatizing those businesses well enough to be able to scale it. So that was kind of my role within BizPay, and your options, and now this new project with Ploy. So yeah.
Amazing. So I'd love to now throw a question to you all about what have been the biggest challenges that you've faced in your journey. So Emma, I'd love to start with you and hear about some of the challenges that you faced and how you overcame that.
I think being in tech for a long time, I think one of the not exactly the challenges, but one of the things that sometimes it just it make me wonder that why is the tech space like that, is that being very male dominated, always working with all guys around me. Like now, even in a team that I'm working is 11 guys and myself. So sometimes the challenge is just. I think it's kind of nowadays it's typical, but like early in my career, it wasn't really, so I wasn't used to it. And then so I think it's just getting coming out of those rooms that you can get your voice heard, etc. I think that was one of the challenges that I was always facing during my career, and now I'm very comfortable with that. And I don't see that much of a challenge. Over time, I learned that how actually I could make that work for myself between, all my team members. And it's not an issue, to be honest, now anymore. But yeah, that was one of the basic kind of challenges that I faced very often during my career.
Yeah. So have you developed strategies for handling, being the only woman in the world, in the room? Are there things?
Yeah, I think one is that learning about how, like for us as a female, slightly our work styles work, or the way that we're working is different with guys. Maybe we take care of a lot of details, pay attention to want to make sure everything to be perfect, and every details get met when we want to deliver a specific project. But guys, they don't really think of that, and they just think of the end goal, and basically, even if it's not perfect, it's fine. So I think it's a good thing actually in many ways, because then you can move faster a lot of time, and instead of spending your time on all the details, etc. Or even sometimes some of these things, and even sometimes guys, they don't really mean in a conversation that if they want to get their word approved in the meeting, in a big meeting, so they just say their opinion, etc. But as a female, so maybe I was getting emotional about that and just didn't feel bad or something like that. Then later on, I managed to basically control my emotion more and be more basically wise about the situation, and make a bright decision or discuss that, control my emotion, basically be more intelligent about the emotional situations at work.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of a learned thing that getting used to the way that they communicate.
Not necessarily get used to it, but more understanding your male colleague, like how they work usually. It's not, the thing is that sometimes you think that I was thinking that they treating me that way, but actually they treating each other that way too. So it's not offensive. That's how they work. So if they want to prove the decision they have or the idea that they have, they work hard and they discuss that. Basically, they bring a lot of things on the table to basically prove it. But sometimes I didn't do that much, and I'm just getting offended in the discussion that maybe they say, oh, this is not right, or etc. Then at the time that I start bringing more on the table, proving a lot of things, like a startup, when you say this is a problem, this is a solution I'm proposing, that's basically a pitch deck, right? So as the better that you could pitch, so the better you could win the basically discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. How about you, Tyron? What's been one of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I think inherently as women, unfortunately, in business, I think we're more inclined, and I think probably especially in predominantly tech businesses, to feel like we have to know all of the answers. We have to make sure that we feel like we've got it all under control, that putting our hand up and admitting that we don't know something, or that we are maybe not sure on how to solve a problem, that we're going to look like we're not good enough, or that we're not deserving to be there, or not deserving to be in a position of authority. And I think I noticed that our male counterparts, a lot of the time, they don't have a lot of those fears, and aren't often as affected by imposter syndrome and those things as female founders are. So I think for me, one of the challenges was, especially as a non-technical founder, being able to come into a room and feel confident asking questions and needing to understand, things like system architectures or why we were choosing to build in particular code bases, and that those were legitimate questions, and that anyone that I was working with, whether they were team members or suppliers, should be able to explain those things to me in a way that I could understand as a non-technical founder, and that they were valid questions to be asking. And I think the second part of that was feeling like it was okay to put my hand up and ask for help. And some of the best relationships I now have in my businesses are from people that either other founders or CTOs of other organizations, or people that have turned into mentors or investors, are from people that I put my hand up and said, hey, look, I don't understand. We need to build a payment gateway. Should I use Stripe or should I use Braintree or PayPal? Could someone help me? I don't quite know how to do this. And what do you use in your company and why did you choose it? And they've gone on to become such formative relationships and people that have been able to help me through so many challenging situations. So I think definitely, feeling okay to ask questions, and then feeling okay to put your hand up and ask for help are definitely things that I sort of definitely struggled with in the early days, and feeling the perception was going to be that I didn't have it under control. And actually realizing now that it was, just simply standing in the way of my own success. It was preventing the people that could help me, and in many cases were being paid to help me, my team and advisors and things, from actually being able to add that assistance. So that's definitely something that I would recommend to women who are starting out their careers or moving up the ladder through technology businesses is don't feel like you can't put your hand up and ask for help or ask questions.
That's really great advice, I think. And I find that a lot of founders are hesitant to ask for help. They don't want to look like they're not able to do it themselves, and they try and do everything on their own. Why do you think that is?
I think maybe genetically we're inherently a little bit that way inclined to want to be problem solvers and hold it all together. And I think also that you, especially if you've raised capital, you've convinced a whole bunch of people to carry big rocks uphill for you, and you're convincing your team to do all of these crazy things every day for you because they believe in your idea. And so showing sort of any element of doubt in that it feels a little bit terrifying, I think. So, I don't know that there's an easy solution or an easy answer to that one, but I definitely think at least having conversations about it is the first place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Taryn. Suzette, I'd love to hear from you. What's been one of the challenges that you've faced on your journey?
Well, I've actually probably, for me, it's been sort of three major challenges, two of which are sort of covered by Taryn. Just the first one being, running or setting up an IT consulting company in 20 years ago. You can probably imagine with working with the Australian federal government, it was very male dominated. So that was very much having to sort of deal with running a company, and a lot of the imposter syndrome that you were talking about, Taryn, came into it as well. But interestingly enough, at the time, I didn't really know what I didn't know. So I actually felt okay at that point, actually putting and asking everyone for help. And it was interesting when you were saying this, Taryn, because I was with my sort of current situation now of running a new IT business. I don't think I'm asking for help or collaborating as much as I used to when I did with Sensory 7. And it's interesting, with Sensory 7, I sort of kept going around going, can you help me? Can you help me? And because of that, I built lots of business relationships with other businesses around Canberra and also outside of Canberra that, and for people who are not aware, Canberra is the equivalent of Washington, DC for Australia. So it's our nation's capital. So in Canberra, by building those relationships, some really interesting things happened. I found that, in fact, my competitors actually became my collaborators. And more often than not, I actually worked with them, and we actually did a lot more business together and grew together because I actually wasn't afraid at that time to ask for help. I must admit, now I think we all, imposter syndrome, I think, comes a little bit more these days when you actually you do have credibility and you are a brand in some way, because I think sometimes, I know now I'd probably have been quite guilty of what Taryn was saying, of not asking for help. And there's a few things that I'll be doing after this session and reaching out to a few more people, because there's a few areas. And that was sort of my third one, which was around, running this one around not being able to, sort of being a female founder in an IT tech company. We don't necessarily get as much funding, but I think that as much as anything is because we don't ask for it as much as the guys and the boys do. So the other one it sits in between those two is another one though that I think hits all business owners at some time, but we don't necessarily give it a lot of sort of thing, and that's illness. I've had two major illness periods over the life of my career, both of which had they were not like a 1 or 2 week. One put me in hospital for 2 weeks and actually took me out of my business for almost 12 months. And I actually developed a 6-figure tax debt because of that, of which I then had to actually work out systems afterwards. And I paid that back to the ATO, or the Australian Taxation Office, which is our IRS, for anyone who's also not Aussie. Within 3 years, as well as making the company profitable again. And there was a number of reasons why it happened, and that sort of, and I learned from that. The second major illness actually happened in 2019. So for me, 2020 wasn't as bad because of 2019 had been so horrendous. And that again took me out of the business, and I had to actually work a way to actually put things in place. And for me, being the background in systems, a lot of that helped me to keep my business afloat. So I think it's one of those things where we have to, as humans, acknowledge that, we are not machines as much as we sometimes think we are, and we continue to try to push through things, that we need to take some time for us at times, because otherwise you will, you'll have situations where you just can't do it.
Wow, that sounds like a really challenging experience that you went through with your illness.
Both of them were big ones. The other one took about, the first one took about 12 months to get over it, and the second one about 18 months or so. And in fact, it was actually the development of Simple Marketing that started to bring me back into the land of the living, because both of them did take me offline for a long period of time, and I had to put strategies in place to run my business at the time, because I just was incapable of doing it.
Mm. And I guess, that's why systems are so important, aren't they? Because we never know, as the founder, we're trying to do everything and be across everything, but we have to have systems in place because you don't know what could happen tomorrow.
Absolutely. And you don't know. And the first one happened, it was actually an allergic reaction. And so literally I woke up in the morning one day, I was actually a speaker at a conference at the time, woke up covered in a rash. 2 days later, I was in hospital from it. You don't know, it can happen so quickly. And I think, there's been a lot of challenges for people with COVID. Thankfully, in Australia, we've been incredibly lucky to be insulated from that for the most part. But a lot of people around the world are finding that this is a big area that they need to, and if you are prepared for it and actually put things in place early, you're never going to completely weather it relate, but at least you're going to be able to get through and still have a business at the other side.
Mm. And I think the other important thing you talked about is burnout and overworking. And as founders, there is this kind of hustle culture, which we're surrounded by, but it doesn't have to be that way. We should actually be caring for ourselves and making sure we get downtime. Can you tell us about your experience?
Yeah, look, I think that's interestingly enough, as you said that, I sort of started to think that maybe this is also a bit of a leave over from the male-dominated IT sort of culture previously. We need to start bringing some of our nurturing and collaborative styles, and it's not to say that men are not collaborative, they absolutely are, and vice versa, women the other way, but I think we need both. We need to have that hustle approach, but we also need to make time for ourselves, make time for for us in the business, but also be more collaborative. And I think bringing that in means that we are likely to take some time out when we need it, because as founders we are we are critical to the business, particularly in the early 1 or 2 years of the business. And if you are taken offline for any period of time, your business isn't around anymore. So, having that sort of taking that time out, even if it's a day here and there, gives you that time to reevaluate, give you time to breathe, reset, and then you can start again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Belinda, I'd love to go to you now and hear about what's one of the challenges that you've faced in your journey?
Yeah, oh my gosh, so many. But by the way, Suzette, wow, crazy. I was just sitting here like, wow, my hat goes off to you. So that was intense. But yeah, congratulations for everything you've done so far. I mean, so many. I can't even. I mean, there's like a list of things, right? I don't think it's just about being a woman. I think that's one thing, but there's so many other things. If we're getting vulnerable here, I think the biggest challenge for me has been being taken seriously from males, and I guess I say that from a place of understanding a male, whether they're wanting to do business with me or whether they're wanting to date me or whether there's another agenda behind it, right? And I think a lot of females get caught up with, I guess, influential people or big net worth guys or let's just say leaders in the field of tech. And they can go down a route of them having a different agenda with not wanting to actually get involved with you in business, but they had another agenda of other sorts and not necessarily wanting to date you, but it could be something else with helping their business or there's different agendas behind it, but they make you believe otherwise. So I think my biggest, I guess, challenge was, being taken seriously from leaders in that space. And I think the second thing was, again, being taken seriously from a technical standpoint. So a lot of the leaders and CTOs and funders that I met with when we were about to launch a few tech startups, the question they asked me, he said, Belinda, why do you want to be in tech? Your background is not technical. You're from marketing and sales. I don't understand why you want to be in tech. You're going to fall flat on your face and you're going to fail. Like, this is not going to work for you. And I was like, I just love everything about tech. I love the whole, again, what Taryn was saying is solving a solution at a large scale. I love everything about it, building systems and automating things. I just seen such a scalable approach, especially in recruitment. And I kept pitching over and over again. And literally, I got the same thing thrown in my face saying, I don't understand why you want to be in tech. It doesn't make sense. You're not from a technical background. You're from marketing and sales. Stick to what you know. And I said, absolutely, I agree. Stick to what I know. I'll stick to sales and marketing, but within a tech company. So I guess that's what I did. And that worked really well for me. But I guess the biggest challenges were, again, imposter syndrome, not believing in myself. I had so many doubts along the journey, and I still do, because when people come to me and say certain things, you doubt yourself. You're like, hold on, am I actually doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? And why am I doing it? And I think continuing to ask myself those questions is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and why am I going to this investor meeting? Why am I asking for these funds? Why am I trying to scale this business? Like, what is it actually for? And I think once I continue to keep questioning myself, the grit just doesn't leave. I just keep going. So I guess the biggest challenge was, getting taken seriously and, about the whole technical thing. You're not from tech, so stay away from tech.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
And, those messages from people telling you, oh, you shouldn't be in this space. That's horrible that's happening.
I know, it's horrible. And believe it or not, this guy that told me is actually one of my funders now. So yeah, funny story.
The other issue you touched on is men having a different agenda. So I think that can be a huge barrier for women. I mean, I know myself at LinkedIn, when I'm getting connection requests from men, I'm less likely to accept a connection request from a man than from a woman, because I get so many unsolicited messages from men through LinkedIn.
Correct, yeah.
And I think that is then I'm not connecting to potential people who are going to help me grow my business in the same way. How do we get around this as women? How do we? Yeah,
like I'm not a feminist. Like I love males. I love everything they've done for me and my business so far. It's really hard to, I guess, see through males pretty quickly. I guess what I'm saying is I'm still trying to work on that journey, because I still don't know what the actual strategy is. I guess I ask up front. I'm really honest and open about what my agenda is, and vice versa. I'm hoping, but I don't know for sure what their actual agenda is until I actually go on that journey with that person. You don't know for sure. And I guess some men can be seen as wanting a different agenda, but that's probably not the case, because that's happened to me before. So I guess it's just going on that journey and trying it before you make a decision, because you could pull the plug too early and miss out on an opportunity. So you shouldn't, let that disregard you for taking on a relationship with a male, or connecting with a male, or messaging a male, or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a tricky one to navigate sometimes, though, isn't it?
It's tricky, yeah. But it's life. I mean, it's a journey, right? And we can't let that disregard what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to talk about funding now. The stats are that women receive about 2.7% of the funding globally. And then when they do receive funding, men will receive 2 million and women are given like 200,000. And so there's a huge gap there. So I know, Taryn, you've gone down the funding route with your business and were able to get funding within 6 months of launching, which is quite incredible. Are you able to tell us a bit about the fundraising journey and how you did it?
Yeah, of course. And I think those stats are terrifying, obviously. I do think that it's a trickle-down effect to there being less female founders as well. So when we have less females starting companies, we also have less females starting tech companies, which have higher valuations generally. They're more inclined to start businesses that aren't as scalable and don't necessarily have a global footprint. And so the valuations are lower, and then therefore they can raise less capital. So I think it's a combination of problems. I think we need to solve the talent pipeline problem, encouraging women to go into careers in technology and found tech companies. But yeah, so we raised venture capital. I was very fortunate to have amazing mentors and champions around me who really walked me through the process and helped me understand some of the things that I needed to look out for. We were in a very fortunate position that we'd been approached about raising capital and we hadn't gone out to do a roadshow or weren't proactively looking at the time, which it was good and bad in the sense that, we were then running before we could walk. We'd raised venture capital and had very intense growth targets that we had to hit. So, I think there's the benefit of hindsight of maybe going, can you bootstrap for longer? What does that look like? And I think that there's a phenomenal amount of information available online now about raising capital, which I certainly made use of through my journey. There's open source term sheets online. There's amazing startup communities that you can go and ask all sorts of questions about, particular, liquidity preferences or founder vesting. And I think that it's another really important point of making sure that you deeply understand everything in the process, because it's like getting married, but you can't get divorced. These people are with you forever. you can, it doesn't matter how much you dislike them or what happens, you are in bed together forever. So, or for the life of your company. So really making sure that you deeply understand all of the clauses, and the process, and what dilution means and how it's going to impact your business over time. So I think it's obviously it's an amazing opportunity to be able to go and scale your company and do things that you wouldn't simply be able to do when you're just bootstrapped. But it also comes with a huge amount of risk and a huge amount of responsibility.
I love that analogy that you gave. It's like a marriage, can't get a divorce.
Can't get divorced.
So I guess people who are looking at taking on investment, really being sure that your values align with the people who are your investors is important, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I say it is like dating. It should be a two-way relationship. So go and have lots of coffee dates with people that you're looking to take money from, or And, I suggest people start doing that a long time before they're thinking about raising capital, 6 to 12 months before they're, even thinking about raising. So go and meet them and build those relationships and see who you like and see who you work well with and see who has a, similar view of the world and shared values and understands what success means for you. And because I think, it's so fundamentally important that you're aligned in your vision and your values and your goals for it to be a successful working relationship. And I think so many people don't take the time to go through that dating phase of trying to work out if you both like each other before you get into a commercial transaction together. Yeah,
I think it's really all about the connection and the relationship and the chemistry you have together, isn't it? And
sorry, you just dropped out there.
Oh, sorry. It's about the connection and the relationship you have. And I guess that's the same as taking on a business partner of any kind.
Absolutely.
You have to really be aligned with each other and understand
and have all of those difficult conversations up front. What does it look like if someone is sick and needs to take time off, or what does it look like if someone wants to take time off to spend, to have a child or spend time with their family, or if someone wants to move overseas, or, one person is less passionate about the business anymore and the other person wants to take it on. Have all of those awkward, uncomfortable conversations up front.
And were you able to do that with your investor?
Yeah, we were really lucky that we had a lot of tough conversations up front, and we sat down and we nutted it out, rounds and rounds and rounds of revisions of shareholder agreements. But it just meant that going into the relationship, everyone really knew where they stood. And I think that it really helped us build a really good framework of trust and how we solved problems together. So when things did come up in future, which they're always going to do in business, we had a framework of how we would work through those things together, and how we would have those challenging conversations. And it just meant, I think, we understood each other better as people, which, definitely helped.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm just curious about your investor, because you said that they came to you before you kind of went out and did a round. Was it someone who you knew previously and you'd known them for a while? How did you come across this person?
No, I'd actually met with them with a person from their fund to get some advice about when I should bring in an executive management team into my startup, because I was running 2 businesses at the same time, and I was, going, oh God, I can't do this. Is not sustainable forever. And when can I bring in a more experienced team? And should I sell the other business? What could that look like? And so I'd had a couple of those conversations with them just at a sort of startup dinner. And then a couple of weeks later, they reached out and said, hey, look, we think your idea is really great. And if you're serious about giving it a red hot go, then we would love to be a part of your journey and we'd be interested in investing. So if you are interested, then come and see us and come and talk to us. And I was like, oh gosh, I had enough problems without throwing that one in in as well. So yeah. But it does go to show the power of those, networking dinners and building those relationships and asking for help. That purely came from me saying, I don't know what I should do in this situation. Can I get some advice from someone further along the journey than me?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, how has having that investment made a difference to the business?
I mean, it just gave us rocket fuel that we never would have been able to do through bootstrapping. And it's also the reason we chose to go with that particular venture capital firm. We do have strategic investors as well, but it was just the ability to open doors. So they have such phenomenal, strong networks and connections and amazing opportunities for us. So it's just opened doors that we never would have been able to open on our own. So having people who had, gone through this journey before and that we can call on to say, hey, look, we're seeing a particular trend in our data. Do you have someone that could help us understand why this particular thing might be occurring? Or who knows a fantastic IP lawyer in the US to deal with a particular problem? It just, has been so helpful in having those people. But more than anything, just being able to open doors, I think is, the big one for us.
Oh, well, congratulations. That's a fantastic story and a great outcome. Yeah, really cool.
Thank you.
And Belinda, I'd love to jump to you now because I know that you've done some capital raising as well. Can you tell us about your experience?
Yeah, it was actually quite similar to Taryn's, but not a VC. So he had his own company, which does really, really well. And there's actually a couple guys. So a couple of them have been following me on LinkedIn, so social media, for, I would say, about 12 and a bit months now, like just over a year. And we've had probably several coffee dates. We've had lunch, we've had dinner, and these conversations have been over, you know, things of doing stuff together in some form, or a potential investment. So funny enough, Ployd, my new project, came about because of this person. So what had happened is we were supposed to go into partnership, and we had coffee, and he's like, Belinda, I know you can come up with something amazing. I know it in my soul. Please, can you just do me a favor for a week? Lock yourself in a room with a whiteboard and just map out what it is that you can do to solve a problem within your current industry. And I actually thought it was a joke at the time. And I was like, this guy is just like, you know, just saying something silly. So I literally did that, and I mapped out a solution of what I can do, and I guess how I can scale my current recruitment industry, or I guess change something. So I did that, and long story short, we had the pitch deck ready. We've got the UI UX. So I think if people don't know what I'm talking about, so before you actually build out the product, which takes usually around 6 months to a bit, depending on what product it is, you need a form of a UI UX to be able to show what the product will look like to actually pitch to investors. If you don't have that, there's no point of going to investors, you know, with what the problem is and what you're trying to solve, because they're just not going to look at, they don't know what they're looking at. They don't understand what you're trying to build. So you need to have some type of form of product. So I think from there, I actually just built relationships. So he was a form of a relationship off LinkedIn. And then the other guy that I'm talking about, same thing. He was a form of relationship that I built on LinkedIn after 5 coffee dates. So a lot of the guys are actually not from VC world. They're just strategic investors. So want to be a part of something that I'm doing to be able to obviously provide value plus funding. So I guess that's how it came about. And then the other investors with the other startups that I'm involved in were actually VC funding. So a lot of them were like from Shaw and Partners and stuff like that, which are a quite large firm. And obviously they have connections to like a broker. They've got their own connections where they have investors that are interested. It could be strategic or just investors solely. And they would come in and then, you know, raise the money. So I think we raised with BizPay, I raised through Shaw and Partners 1.5 million. In total, it was like 24 million they raised as total of BizPay. And I think they're raising an additional 20 something million before they go to IPO, which is in November. Anywhere auctions right now, we're actually in the process of trying to raise through Shaw and Partners, which is a VC firm, but we also have our strategic partnerships as well within the United States and Australia. So people that are actually in the industry that have their own successful company that want to put money in plus value and obviously take equity, you know, for that. And then I guess, you know, for Ployd, which was the relationship that I built. So yeah, fingers crossed. I'm hoping that I can bootstrap Ployd, to be fair, for at least 6 to 8 months, because I have a strategic partnership already with a CTO to build out the product in return of equity, which is amazing. And then the money we would need is just for the marketing and sales, and obviously to keep the product sustainable over time. So yeah, that was my story.
That's
yeah,
amazing.
But I just wanted to add that it was literally just building relationships on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's
or I guess outside of that. And that took about a year and a bit to build those relationships. It took quite some time.
I guess it just goes to show the power of LinkedIn, doesn't it, really?
Oh my gosh. If nobody is on LinkedIn watching this, you need to create a LinkedIn profile. It's incredible. It will change your life.
Awesome. Thank you, Belinda. So before we wrap up, I'd love to ask each of you, what would be your advice to someone who was starting out, who really had a dream to go and do bigger things in the world and start their startup, what would you say to them? Emma, how about you? What advice would you give to someone starting out?
Maybe I'm the less qualified here to say about a startup. I started my own startup, but it didn't really work in 2020 with COVID. We didn't get enough revenue, etc., and we have to stop it earlier this year. But yeah, that was experience anyway. As long as you have a dream, just go for it. I think just put your effort and put the time and effort and go for what you're thinking and your heart is thinking, and you will achieve something. I might start a business another time, inspiring with this lady.
Thanks, Emma. Tyron, how about you? What advice would you have for someone starting out?
A couple of things. There's never going to be a perfect time. I think I often hear people who say, I'm going to start my business when my kids are the right age, or once I've paid my mortgage off, or there's never going to be a perfect time. There really is, there's always going to be challenges in your life and tumultuous periods, and that only becomes more amplified when you have your own business. So stop waiting for the perfect time. And I think probably to share your ideas with as many people as possible before you jump headfirst into them. I also hear from a lot of people that, I've got a really, really great idea for a startup, but I don't want to share it with anyone in case they steal my idea. No one is waiting around to steal your idea. The pain is all in the execution. I've written a long and ranty blog about this, which you can read on my website. But share your idea with as many people as possible. Get as many different sounding boards of advice. The absolute best you can hope for is that potentially someone that you speak to has words of wisdom that make the journey easier, or can connect you to someone that can make the journey easier. So there's never going to be the right time, and share your idea with as many people as possible before you take the big jump.
Beautiful. Thanks, Tyron.
Thanks.
Suzette, how about you? What advice would you have?
I iterate what Taryn just said, is there's never a good time. Just get in and do it. That's probably the great one. But the other one also is surround yourself with really good strategic advisors. Even if you can either give them a small percentage of equity, or they just might be people that you bounce ideas off. But surround yourself with really good people who actually understand what you're trying to do. It's great to have our sort of supporters who your friends and family, but the reality is most of them don't know what you're going through, and if you test ideas with them, are usually going to say, I don't like that, but really they're not your avatar, they're not your customer. So surround people around that. But the other thing with it also is get good advice on governance. We actually could have set our company up, the $200 or $500 or $1,000 companies, but we actually spent the money and got somebody who actually knew about IT startups. They knew about the path that we wanted to do, that we wanted to take funding. We wanted to take it probably in Australia, but also potentially our market being the US, that we may even take US funding. So we set it up so that we could grow and didn't get this, we aren't going to have a really big gotcha down the track of, you should have considered this. Get the advice early, as Tara mentioned before, around having those conversations around funding early. Same sort of things with the things that are likely to affect the longevity of the company. Talk to someone first before you actually do what you're going to do. Don't just rush out and get an off-the-shelf company, or rush out and actually take the first piece of bucket of money that is offered to you and that sort of thing. Do your due diligence, get the right people, and you'll be good. And surrounding that.
Wonderful advice. Thanks, Suzette. Belinda, how about you? What advice would you have?
Yeah, I was literally about to say what Suzette said is, get people involved ASAP straight away if you can. Give them, a minimal equity piece. I would highly suggest the more, the better. So whatever industry you're in, let's just say retail, get the CEO of, retail stores or COOs, things like that, and just connect with these types of people, get them involved as much as possible, because you need people there on the journey that know 10x you do, because on your own, you're not really going to get that far. So if you can maximize that, yeah, definitely do that. I would say, you know, at least 10 plus people surrounded within that space. And I think the second thing I will add is on top of, you know, starting something, is people don't really look too much into brand as much. Like, I mean, obviously we do all tech startups, but I think a personal brand is super important. Building on your personal brand as well as the business brand, your technical brand. So, you know, Taryn has an amazing personal brand, for an example. She's always out there and doing all these random podcasts, and she was on my podcast. You know, she did all these amazing things, and she always just shows up. She literally just shows up. And I think it's so important to put yourself out there and just keep showing up, because if you're talking about your brand, you're making people feel something. And when they feel something, they'll never forget you. So, yeah, constantly keep doing that and show up.
Yeah, beautiful advice. Thank you, Belinda. Well, thank you so much to each of our panelists for being here today. It's been wonderful hearing from all of you. And thank you to everybody who's been watching today as well. I hope you're enjoying the Women in Tech 24-hour world tour. I'm now going to throw to our friends in Thailand for the next session and wrap up now. But thank you to all of our panelists for being here, and we will see you again soon.